We've officially made it to Saints Week. Week 1 of the Arizona Cardinals 2025 regular season starts this coming Sunday. Today we're going to go ahead and preview Cardinals versus Saints. What do the Arizona Cardinals need to do to come out with the W? Let's go ahead and get started. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into another video. Definitely do me a huge favor, smack up that like button and subscribe for more Arizona Cardinals content. On this channel, we're covering the Arizona Cardinals news, breaking news, conversational pieces, everything surrounding your favorite team. And definitely don't be one of these guys that love to hover around the channel. Just subscribe it up. It's absolutely for free. We're on the road to 18K. Cannot do it without you guys. But today, we are going to be doing a preview of Cardinals versus Saints, Week 1 matchup of the regular season. And can we get a hallelujah or some fire emojis in the comments below, because we've officially made it to the regular season and we're talking about real football that matters. Now, although the Cardinals have a very favorable matchup heading over to New Orleans, I could only assume that the New Orleans Saints fans almost feel the same way when they're looking at the Arizona Cardinals Week 1 matchup, saying, oh, that could potentially be a W for them. Cardinals feel the exact same way, but I really want to kind of do a deep dive into this roster for the New Orleans Saints and kind of give us a taste of who to kind of look out for, what do the Arizona Cardinals need to do to win, and who could potentially come up with the W in this coming, Sunday. Now, it's going to be very important for the Cardinals to start off 1-0 in a very, very tough division in the NFC West. Obviously, with the Rams being a favorite to win the NFC West, you got the 49ers with, they got talent, but a lot of aging talent over there. And you got the Seattle Seahawks that completely revamped their offense, but their defense is still really, really solid and really, really young. But the Cardinals right now need to stack up as much wins as they potentially can, because we all know the stigma, right? At the second part of the season, it almost kind of feels like every year there's a collapse under the Kyler Murray era. So we need to stack up as many wins as we potentially can, especially with this favorable start to the season. So let's go ahead and get started here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about, the Saints and what we need to do as a team to come out with the W here. Now, shout out here to the sponsors of the AZ Sports Fan here on YouTube for the entirety of the 2025 season. Sleeper, more on them a little later on, but let's go and talk about Saints Week. We all know that there has been, I guess, I wouldn't say a quarterback competition, but I guess, yeah, you would say quarterback competition, because they were dealing with either starting Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck, which is going to be a second round pick in this last draft. Now, they're doing the smart thing in terms of allowing Spencer Rattler to kind of go through the bumps and bruises and kind of throwing them out to the fire, because Tyler Shuck, although Spencer Rattler is a young quarterback, Tyler Shuck was just drafted in this latest draft. So I don't know if their plan is Tyler Shuck being their future and they're trying to get him to be developed. We don't know, right? But there's a lot of people out there that potentially are saying the Saints could potentially be a number 1 overall pick, or maybe a pick in the 2026 NFL draft, somewhere in the top 5. So we don't really know if the Saints are going to be very competitive this year, but of course, it's the beginning part of the season. There's a lot of high hopes and optimism in every single fan base, right? So the Cardinals already know who the quarterback is going to be playing, and that's going to be none other than Spencer Rattler. Now, we also do know that they're going through a, I would say a rebuild, right? Maybe the start of a rebuild. They ended up hiring their new head coach in Kellen Moore this last year, and Kellen Moore has had some good success with the Dallas Cowboys, as well with the Eagles, as well being the offensive coordinator, and he's finally got the job in terms of being a head coach for the New Orleans Saints. Now, I'm kind of curious here, right? Saints fans, if you kind of hopped on this video, how do you feel about Kellen Moore, right? I don't know if expectations are more than 7-8 wins for you guys. Maybe you will be maybe a 3 or 4 win type of team, but let me know what your overall thoughts on Kellen Moore is in the comments below. But the New Orleans Saints are going through a lot of turnover and kind of starting over, right? But when you're looking at their roster, now they still do have a good amount of weapons on that team. Let's go ahead and do a real quick dive into their roster and really kind of look to see who the players you really got to kind of keep your eye on, right? Now, obviously, we all know Spencer Rattler is going to be their QB1 in week 1. Alvin Kamara is going to be one of those guys that you always have to keep your eye on. Chris Olave, although dealt with injuries, he's still pretty solid, right? He's a pretty solid wide receiver. Now, is he a number 1? You got Shaheed over there. You also got Cooks, and you also got, Jawan Johnson over there as well. So he's got some help, right? in terms of weaponry. But right now, I think the big question is Chris Olave that number one guy that's the Saints drafted him to be? Now they have been dealing with a lot of injuries on the offensive line. The biggest one out there is probably going to be Will Clapp, and of course their Swiss Army knife in Taysom Hill has already been ruled out, as you can see here. But on the defensive side of the ball, they got some really good players. Cameron Jordan, I didn't actually even know he was 36 years old. This is insane, but he's still a guy that can be pretty productive on the field. But he has definitely kind of got to the point in his career that maybe he's going to give you 5 or 6 sacks in a season. But he used to be a guy that used to give you a, what, like 8.5, 12 sacks, right? Somewhere in the double digits. But now he's probably averaging somewhere around like 2 or 4 on the season. But he's still a really good player to his own right. You also got players like Chase Young, right? Former first overall pick in the NFL draft. Cooley McKinstry, which I was pretty high on as well. Another underrated guy, which is probably going to be Brian Brissy, another defensive lineman that you really got to keep your eye on as well. And you look at his stats, it definitely seems like he's a playmaker, really young playmaker, 6'5", 305 pounds, 23 years old. He was a first round pick in 2023, but he had 7.5 sacks last year. So this is not a guy that's, is going to be, you can't sleep on them, right? They got players on that side of the ball. So you really need to come out here in New Orleans to play a football game. This is not going to be an easy game for anybody, right? The Saints, neither the Arizona Cardinals. Now, like I said, both fan bases probably see this as a very favorable matchup for themselves, but the Arizona Cardinals right now in their rebuild, they got to win this game. They have to. They got to go to New Orleans, which I understand is a very, very tough environment to play in the Superdome, but they got to go out here and take care of business. This is going to be my New Orleans Saints playmakers you got to keep your eye on. None other than Alvin Kamara being your number one guy, right? You got to make sure that you stop the run. Now, I don't think the Cardinals are going to stop it, flat out stop it. I think right now the biggest concern, although the Cardinals have absolutely upgraded their defensive line, and we're not going to have the services of Walter Nolan, 16th overall pick, because of him, being put on the PUP list before the 53-man roster shakeup. But Monty Ossenfort has done a really good job to upgrade that defensive line, adding, Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell, Josh Sweat. We had the players to be able to kind of have that depth that we needed, right? We got to be able to stop Alvin Kamara. We got to make them one-dimensional, right? And I'm talking about the New Orleans Saints. You got to make sure the ball is in the hands of Spencer Rattler. The problem with Alvin Kamara is they can catch out of the backfield and can run the ball down your throats as well. So this is going to be a player to really keep your eye on when it comes down to the Arizona Cardinals. They are going to be running through him. Alvin Kamara is going to be their number one weapon. Number two, Chris Olave. I did mention he has some injury history, but he is right now still going to be their number one wide receiver. Number three is going to be Rashid Shaheed, a really good playmaker, a guy that's going to be able to stretch the field, a deep ball, contested catch type of guy, right? So you got to keep your eye on those three guys. And then number four, Cameron Jordan, and then, Brian Brissy as well. So, like I said, they got playmakers, right? They got Brandon Cooks. They got, Jawan Johnson. They got players. Now, their offensive line has been dealing with some struggles. Our defensive line, they got to harass Spencer Rattler. They got to go back there, harass him, and not allow him to survey the field. Now, like I said, they got weapons, so this is going to be a very fascinating thing to see this coming Sunday versus the New Orleans Saints. Now, quick shout out here to the sponsors of the AZ Sports Fan here on YouTube, Sleeper. If you are new to Sleeper and you have not heard of them, you can do anything on there, and I'm talking about create your fantasy football league. You can go on here and, do higher and lowers. It's absolutely a really, really amazing app right now. If you use promo code AZSF on your first deposit, they will match it up to $100. Go and make sure you check them out. Sleeper is going to be one of the most fun apps I've seen in a very, very long time. And this is kind of, preview of what you can go ahead and do on there, right? I got Kyler Murray over 25 yards. I got Trey McBride with more than 6.5 receptions. And then we got Alvin Kamara. He's going to get an anytime touchdown. I could feel it, right? Because although I said to myself, you're going to have to stop him. I don't think the Cardinals are going to stop him, but they have to limit him, right? And, of course, they got to go out there and put a Thursday night football game on there as well. I think Saquon Barkley is still the truth, and he's going to go run crazy on that Dallas Cowboys defense. Go ahead and make sure you check out Sleeper using promo code AZSF on your first deposit and get you 100% on your deposit match up to $100. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue to talk about Cardinals versus Saints. Now, what do the Arizona Cardinals need to do to win this game, right? Well, we mentioned it a little earlier. Our defensive line has absolutely been upgraded. We need to be able to get pressure on Spencer Rattler from the beginning of the game. We need to somehow limit Alvin Kamara in terms of, make sure he probably is one touchdown, 60 yards, right? We can't have him be a big, impactful player for the Saints team because he can take over a game. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, the Arizona Cardinals, there's been a lot of question marks about is Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s connection better than last year. It was, and it is. I've seen it in training camp. I've seen it in preseason. Their connection is better. It's not 100% better, but I'm going to be real. Kyler Murray's number one person to target is Trey McBride. Nobody can cover Trey McBride. Even when we were in the joint practice with the Denver Broncos, which arguably has one of the best defenses in the NFL going into this year, Trey McBride was unguardable. Absolutely unguardable. So you got Trey McBride, which is a tight end that is going to be an up and rising star. More people will know his name once the touchdowns, catch up to the yards. And then on top of that, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., which the Cardinals are leaning very, very heavily on to be that number one X factor / wide receiver number one for this offense. Now, you also got guys like Michael Wilson and then Zay Jones, which is probably going to be your number ones, twos, and threes. But the Cardinals, what it seems like in terms of the moves that they made, they're going to continue with the run-heavy package, right? They're going to run with the 12 personnel, right? Those type of packages where you see James Conner being your bruiser back there. We're going to run this offense through James Conner. And on top of that, our 1-2 punch in Trey Benson. We've already heard Jonathan Gannon come out and say that we have a 1-2 punch, right? Two number one running backs back there with Trey Benson and James Conner. So we're going to be running a lot, and we're going to test that D line, and we're going to be testing that defense in general to see if they're going to be able to stop our run. That is how our offense is going to be run through, right? Or run. Now that's going to open up play action. That's going to open up the deep shots to Marv, to Trey McBride, to Michael Wilson, to Zay Jones. So overall, this Arizona Cardinal team needs to be able to establish the run to make sure those big open, 20, 30-yard passes down the field are going to be open for Kyler Murray and Marvin, or Kyler Murray and Zay, or Kyler Murray and Trey McBride. So overall, this is going to be a very, very fascinating game here for the Arizona Cardinals. Do I feel like the Cardinals are, have the leg up? I do. I think the Cardinals right now at this point of what was a 3-year rebuild, they have enough pieces to go out to New Orleans and take care of business. Now, I would like to see a dominant game. Now, dominant, I mean the Cardinals need to at least win with 2 possessions, right? And I'm talking about maybe a 30 to 21 game, right? Or 30 to 17 game, right? I would love to see the Arizona Cardinals go to New Orleans and actually dominate this game. Now, will they start off slow? I mean, some people might say that the offense might start off slow. They did not really use their starters in preseason as much as I would like to see them. But I got all my faith in the world of Jonathan Gannon in terms of what he felt like was the right usage from these starters. He says he feels like he's seen enough from these guys, right? So I'm expecting a very, very strong start, especially with the way that Jonathan Gannon used the starters. I want to see a strong start, and I want to see them finish really, really strong as well. I want to see the Cardinals win this game, start off the season 1-0, and obviously, hopefully, are at the top of the division because I'm going to be real. The Rams have a pretty tough matchup. You got the 49ers, so it does an easy schedule, and you got these, Seahawks in this division. The Cardinals need to go ahead and stack up wins early in the season to go ahead and make sure that the collapse, if it does happen, doesn't hopefully hinder them too much, right? But hopefully, fingers crossed, that doesn't happen and the Cardinals figure out some sort of way to not have that collapse happen at the end of the season again. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are your overall thoughts on Cardinals versus Saints? Do you see the Arizona Cardinals coming out here and coming out with a W? Let me know in the comments below. Big keys to success, you got to run the ball. Another key to success, you got to make sure those explosives are out there for the Cardinals, right? I'm talking about Marv, I'm talking about Trey, I'm talking about Zay, I'm talking about Wilson as well. All these guys need to be able to eat in order for you to come into New Orleans and take their lunch money. And that's exactly what I'm trying to see in this game. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are your overall thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. Have a great rest of your day and go Cardinals.